To all who are listening, right now, all of Europe is in a state of shock. The King of Spain has just held an emergency press conference that has sent ripples of surprise across the globe. Canada, he declared, is the teacher from whom we must learn. We have been too arrogant. What could possibly have happened to cause the monarch of one of Europe's greatest royal houses to make such a stunning pronouncement? The origin of this story began 4 days ago, with an emergency landing at Toronto Pearson International Airport. The Spanish royal flight experienced a severe technical malfunction, forcing it to descend unexpectedly onto Canadian soil. The initial reaction of the royal entourage at that moment was one of disdain. A small, provincial country in North America like that? How could they possibly care for us with the honor we are due? And yet, 72 hours later, their perspective had shifted by 180 degrees. News agencies from around the world, the BBC, Reuters, and others, were all converging on Toronto, and European leaders were calling emergency meetings. What happened during those 3 days? My name is Carlos Martinez, Chief of Protocol for the Spanish Royal House. I have served His Majesty for 25 years, but in my entire life, I have never been so astonished. Now, you will hear this incredible story from my own lips. Greetings. I am Carlos Martinez, Chief of Protocol for the Spanish Royal House. For the past 25 years, I have accompanied His Majesty on travels to every corner of the globe. Whether to Europe, the Middle East, or the Americas, I have experienced every form of reception imaginable. I have stayed in hotels and used airports that are considered the best in the world. But the scene I witnessed at Toronto Pearson International Airport that day shattered all 25 years of my experience. The incident began aboard the royal flight, which had departed from Madrid en route to Tokyo for an official state visit, accompanied by Her Majesty the Queen and a delegation of 6 senior advisors. Every detail had been meticulously planned, including a state dinner with the Emperor of Japan. As our aircraft was traversing the airspace over the region, it suddenly began to shudder violently. The captain announced an emergency, a critical failure in the hydraulic systems. We needed to land at the nearest suitable airport immediately. The closest option was Toronto, a mere 40-minute flight away. Haneda Airport in Tokyo was still an hour and a half away, and Osaka was even farther. Given the aircraft's condition, Toronto was our only choice. When I knelt to report the situation, His Majesty's face grew stern. One of the advisors expressed his displeasure openly. The image of Canada in our eyes at that time was of a country in North America, perhaps notable for its natural landscapes and winter sports, but not a nation with the prestige befitting an official visit from a European monarchy. But we had no other option. Safety had to come first. The surprises began even before we landed. A voice from the Pearson control tower came over the radio in perfect, formal Castilian Spanish. Normally, no matter where we travel in Europe, English is the standard for aviation communication. But here was an airport in North America communicating in Spanish, and with a flawless standard accent, no less. The emergency landing procedure was executed with breathtaking speed. A runway was cleared instantly. Fire trucks and ambulances were already waiting, perfectly positioned. The landing was so smooth, it was hard to believe it was an emergency caused by hydraulic failure. The moment the aircraft door opened and I stepped onto the jet bridge, I could hardly believe my eyes. Lining the walkway were more than 15 officials in impeccable business suits, standing in a welcoming formation. Each one inclined their head respectfully and greeted us in fluent Spanish. The Canadian man at the head of the line introduced himself in flawless, unaccented Spanish. He was the head of Pearson Airport's special protocol team and had previously served as a diplomat at the Canadian Embassy in Madrid for 7 years. His accent was so authentic he could have been from Madrid himself. Even his use of royal honorifics was perfect. A special reception service had already been prepared for His Majesty. A luxurious wheelchair, emblazoned with the official crest of the Spanish royal house, was waiting. I wondered how they could have possibly prepared all of this with no advance warning of our emergency landing. What followed was even more astounding. The welcome beverage they offered was not a simple drink, but chilled sparkling cider from the Niagara region, served in elegant flutes, accompanied by a platter of fresh Ontario berries and artisanal cheeses, arranged with artistic precision, a celebrated local delicacy. This level of thoughtful preparation deeply impressed us. As we walked towards the VIP channel, the surprises continued. The walls of the corridor were adorned with high-quality prints of Canadian art and architecture, a stunning visual journey from the iconic landscapes of the Group of Seven to the powerful imagery of Indigenous art. It felt as if we were walking through a small, curated museum of Canadian culture. The immigration process was faster than anything I'd ever seen, even in a dedicated VIP facility. The officer addressed us politely in Spanish. The passport check took less than 2 minutes quicker than at our own Madrid-Barajas airport. It was then that an unexpected offer was made. A medical team that was on standby proposed a preliminary health checkup, explaining that the emergency landing could have been stressful and they wanted to ensure everyone was well. This was a level of attentive care we had never received anywhere in Europe. Our luggage had already been handled. Each bag was tagged with our names, meticulously printed in both Spanish and English, and also stamped with the royal crest. I had no idea who had prepared all this or when. The head of the protocol team recommended a hotel for our stay. He explained that Toronto has several hotels with suites specifically designed to host European royalty, complete with Spanish-speaking staff and kitchens specializing in Spanish cuisine. He noted it was a hotel frequently used by other European royal families. Upon exiting the airport, we were met with another surprise: the waiting motorcade. A line of 5 black Mercedes Maybachs, the same model used at the Royal Palace in Madrid, stood gleaming in a stately row. Each chauffeur was dressed in a suit and white gloves. Inside the vehicles, the latest editions of Spanish newspapers and chilled, fresh-squeezed fruit juice were waiting. Everything had been arranged without a single request from our side. The protocol chief explained that they had received an emergency notification from the Spanish embassy and that Canada places the highest importance on welcoming its guests. I found it hard to believe they could organize all of this in the mere 40 minutes since being notified of our emergency. As the motorcade pulled away from the airport and onto the expressway, His Majesty spoke for the first time, his voice filled with surprise. The view outside the window was completely different from what he had imagined. Towering condominium skyscrapers stretched as far as the eye could see. The 6-lane expressway was impeccably maintained, and the traffic was a river of luxury vehicles. This city's infrastructure was in no way inferior to Madrid or Barcelona. It might even be superior. As we crossed over the Don River, everyone fell silent. The Toronto skyline at night was breathtakingly beautiful. The lights from the skyscrapers on both sides of the river glittered to the horizon, and the bridges were adorned with vibrant, colorful lights. One of the advisors whispered softly, "How did a country with so few natural resources build a city like this?" I had the same question. Upon entering the Yorkville district, our astonishment grew. The concrete jungle reminded us of Manhattan in New York. The streets, even though it was past 9 p.m., were as bright as day. Shops were brilliantly lit and bustling with people. Even more remarkably, women could be seen walking alone, freely and without any sign of fear. In Madrid, a woman walking alone late at night is a matter for caution, but here it was perfectly normal. The hotel we checked into was another revelation. The opulence of the lobby was on par with the Ritz in Madrid. Moreover, many of the staff spoke fluent Spanish. The hotel's general manager greeted us in perfect Spanish. He was from Barcelona, but had been working in Canada for 12 years. When we entered the royal suite, everyone gasped in admiration. The nighttime view of Toronto from the 60th floor was beyond description. A sea of lights stretched to the horizon, and the headlights of cars moved like rivers of gold, a grandeur of a different kind, distinct from Paris or London. The dinner served in our room was the final surprise of the evening. It was a masterpiece of modern Canadian cuisine, perfectly seared scallops from the Atlantic Alberta beef tenderloin that melted in your mouth, and a wild blueberry reduction that was sublime. The quality was easily comparable to a Michelin-starred restaurant in Europe. The chef, we learned, was a Frenchman who had fallen in love with Canadian ingredients and had been working here for over 15 years. That night, I couldn't sleep. The things I had seen in just a few hours replayed in my mind. The flawless response at the airport, the Spanish-speaking staff, the incredible urban infrastructure, and above all, the meticulous attention to detail in their hospitality. In 25 years of traveling the world, I had never had an experience like this. And this was only the beginning. The next morning, news arrived that the aircraft repairs would take 2 days. We would have to remain in Toronto. His Majesty expressed a wish to see the city. That afternoon, we visited the Dominion Health Sciences Center. The protocol team recommended it as a leading hospital, frequented by royalty and dignitaries from around the world. But that night, at around 2 a.m., the unexpected happened. I heard a cry from the next room. Rushing over, I found Jose Alvarez, one of the senior advisors, clutching his chest and collapsing. He was 72 years old, with a history of diabetes and high blood pressure. His face was pale, he was covered in a cold sweat, and he was struggling to breathe the clear signs of an acute heart attack. I immediately called the hotel's emergency medical line, and what happened next was incredible. In less than 3 minutes, a team of 4 emergency medical technicians arrived at the room, fully equipped with advanced medical gear. They moved with swift, coordinated precision, immediately attaching a portable ECG and administering oxygen. The team leader, a woman, connected a tablet to a remote location, and a doctor's face appeared on the screen. He introduced himself as a professor of cardiology at the hospital and said he was viewing the ECG data in real time. His diagnosis was immediate: an acute myocardial infarction. The patient had to be transported to the hospital at once. I hesitated, saying I needed to consult the royal physician back in Spain. But the paramedic said firmly, "Sir, we have a golden window of less than 5 minutes. If we don't make a decision now, his life will be in danger." His Majesty made the decision. We will trust the Canadian hospital. What he had witnessed over the past day must have influenced his choice. The ambulance sped away from the hotel, and something even more amazing occurred. The traffic lights at every intersection ahead of us turned green. This was an intelligent traffic system that automatically adjusted signals for emergency vehicles. In just 5 minutes, we arrived at the hospital. At the entrance, a team of more than 10 doctors and nurses was waiting. They called the patient by name and informed us that everything was ready. He could be taken directly to the cardiac catheterization lab. The attending cardiologist, the same professor we saw on the tablet, who had also studied at Johns Hopkins University in the United States, came out to greet us personally. He explained that he had scrambled his team the moment the ambulance departed and had already received the patient's complete medical history from Madrid. I asked how that was possible. He replied that they had made an emergency request through the Spanish embassy and received all the data through an international medical information exchange system in just 10 minutes. Before entering the operating room, the professor explained that a coronary artery was blocked, preventing blood flow to the heart. They needed to insert a stent to open the artery, a procedure that would take about an hour and a half. We were invited to wait in a private lounge. Incredibly, a large monitor in the room was displaying a live feed of the procedure. He explained it was a policy of transparency. If the family wished, they could watch. The operating theater looked like something from the future. 6 large screens covered the wall, and AI-assisted robotic arms moved with pinpoint precision to aid the surgeons. In just 15 minutes, the blocked artery was opened. Blood flow returned to normal. But then, the professor noticed that another artery had a 70% stenosis and required an additional procedure to prevent a future event. This second, preventative step took only another 15 minutes. When the patient was brought out of the operating room, something unbelievable happened. He was fully conscious, with a smile on his face. The professor explained that because the procedure was performed through the wrist, recovery is extremely fast. He would be able to walk in 6 hours. Traditionally, this type of surgery would require a hospital stay of at least 3 to 4 days, but here he could be discharged after just 2 days of observation. The cost was also astounding, approximately 500,000 baht, or about $14,000 USD. For the same treatment in a private clinic in Madrid, the cost could be as high as $200,000. The intensive care unit room was more luxurious than our hotel suite. It was spacious, spotless, and one entire wall was a pane of glass offering a panoramic view of the Toronto skyline at night. But the most incredible feature was a hologram of the patient's heart projected in the air, showing its beating in real-time 3D. An AI system would monitor his cardiac condition 24/7 and alert the medical team instantly of any abnormality. The dedicated nurse assigned to him spoke fluent Spanish. She was an Argentinian who had graduated from the nursing program at McGill University and had chosen to work here because she was so impressed by Canada's healthcare system. The next morning, a multidisciplinary team of more than 10 specialists, cardiologists, endocrinologists, rehabilitation physicians, nutritionists, and psychiatrists came for rounds together. They used a portable ultrasound device to check his vitals instead of a traditional stethoscope, with all data appearing on tablets for the entire team to review collaboratively. The endocrinologist showed a graph of the patient's blood sugar levels, which were being perfectly managed by an AI connected to a continuous glucose monitor and an insulin pump that worked in automated synergy. The rehabilitation specialist introduced a cardiac physiotherapy program using virtual reality. The patient wore a VR headset and experienced the sensation of walking on a beautiful beach, while in reality, he was on a stationary machine. An AI adjusted the exercise intensity in real time based on his physical condition. Most amazing of all, the nutritionist presented the results of a genetic analysis performed on the blood sample taken the night before. The results showed the patient had a genetic marker for slow sodium metabolism. A personalized low-sodium menu had already been designed specifically for him. 3 days later, Mr. Alvarez had recovered so completely he could be discharged from the hospital. The speed of his recovery amazed even the medical team. Before our departure, His Majesty met privately with the professor to express his gratitude and to inquire about Canada's healthcare system and the factors behind its incredible advancement. The professor replied, 30 years ago, Canada was lagging behind, but we made a national commitment to invest in education, develop technology, and reform our system to always be centered on the patient. His Majesty murmured quietly, Spain has much to learn. The day of our departure finally arrived, with our royal flight fully repaired. As we drove to Pearson Airport, His Majesty said, These 3 days have been one of the most valuable experiences of my life. What seemed like a misfortune was a blessing in disguise. As the plane lifted off from Canadian soil, everyone on board was silent. One of the advisors looked out the window and whispered, I want to come back. I want to come and learn more. When we landed in Madrid, hundreds of journalists were waiting. The story of His Majesty's experience in Canada had already spread throughout Europe. A press conference was held immediately. His Majesty declared, I have had an invaluable experience. I have learned so many things, especially about their medical system and the warmth of their people, which are deeply impressive. When a reporter asked if Canada was truly that advanced, His Majesty replied, If you did not see it with your own eyes, it would be difficult to believe. But it is the truth. Their medical system is in no way inferior to Europe's. A week later, His Majesty delivered a national address. He spoke frankly about his experience in Canada. There are many things we must learn from them. We need the humility to be students again. That speech created a major shockwave in Spanish society. The Ministry of Health immediately formed a task force to study the Canadian healthcare system, with plans to send specialists to Canada. I will never forget those 3 days. An unexpected journey that began with an emergency landing became the greatest lesson for all of us. Canada proved that even without vast natural resources, by investing in its people, developing technology, and maintaining relentless determination, it can build a truly great nation. That emergency landing was not a misfortune. It was a blessing that allowed us to get to know the great nation of Canada, and that experience became the catalyst for change in Spain. His Majesty often says that one day he wants to return to Canada, this time for an official state visit as a royal guest, in order to learn as much as possible. I, too, await that day. I want to experience that amazing country once more and to see just how much further Canada has advanced.